Namaskaram. Welcome to everyone watching, whether in the year 2025 or sometime in the future, if there is still such a thing as podcasts and YouTube. Uh, it's wonderful to have all of you here. My name is Francesco Morelli. I'm a classical Hatha yoga teacher trained by Sadhguru Gurukulam at Isha Foundation. And today we have an amazing friend and colleague of mine, and super excited to have him here. If you'd like to introduce yourself, and then let's kickstart this podcast.
Okay, sure. Thank you for having me on, Francesco. Namaskaram, everyone out there. So my name is Saurabh Patel. I'm a classical Hatha yoga teacher from the 2014 batch. I'm guessing most people would be able to recognize my accent. I'm from England, and I'm now living in China. I was teaching while I was in Beijing, some classical Hatha yoga there. But most of what I do here is teaching English.
Super. And just for our audience, how many years has it been that you're living in China?
I would say it's 9, coming up to 10 years now. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, long time.
Yes. So we both went from Europe to Asia. I landed up in India, and you landed up in China. So it's
Yeah,
really
big
a
move.
fascinating tale. And I'm so happy we managed to stay in touch over the years, though it was not always easy to communicate. But it's really, really great. And I'm so excited to explore your teaching side and your profession and the many, many hobbies that you have, and many of which we share in common. So, to start with the yoga part, would you mind sharing where your interest in yoga came from? Was it a specific event, or
Hmm.
did you want to satisfy a particular need by practicing yoga, or did life drop it on your head, or did it knock it on your head like it happens for many people? What was the journey? Please take us through it.
So I think it all started. I think it was started when I was a student at university. I think living a student life and sort of abruptly having the awareness of what student life was and getting involved in being a student kind of left me in a state of confusion, I would say, about myself, how my place in the world. Um, and shortly after I graduated, I think it's fair to say I was quite heavily and deeply involved in conspiracy theories about, how the world is being controlled and there's various powers, etc., that are kind of controlling our lives. Um, and it kind of moved me towards looking at religion. I suppose that was the sort of first step, because these people seem to know or have answers for, the sort of I don't know, turmoil that people experience and have the answers, or claim to have the answers. So I kind of got involved in exploring. I would say that was like an academic pursuit of knowledge and understanding, but it still didn't feel sufficient enough. Um, at the same time, after I graduated, I had a series of jobs, um, and I began exploring a career in personal training, so giving instruction for fitness, health, well-being, things like this. And I still am deeply passionate about that. So as I was kind of going through a process of applying for jobs and wanting to step up the kind of employment ladder, I became self-employed and found a position in Dubai, all related to personal training. But it all kind of fell through. And just, I think, almost a year before that, even that application process, I was watching videos of Sadhguru, and that was sort of part of the kind of process of understanding what yoga really was. My first contact with yoga was actually doing a class once a week while I was a Domino's delivery driver. So I'd finish delivering pizzas and then delivering pizzas, and then I would go to a yoga class. And I had some sort of experience of deep relaxation, but after I started watching a lot of Sadhguru's satsangs, I became aware of a much deeper, kind of mystical aspect, and the possibility of an experience beyond something physical, which really opened my eyes up to, what yoga really was and the potential it really holds. But at that time, I didn't do any practices. I was just sort of listening, to Sadhguru's satsangs, and a lot of what he was saying, not only what he was saying, actually presence. I think Sadhguru's presence just sort of created a certain stillness within me where, I could just sit, unmoving in a sense and just listen. And I think when I look back at it, for the life of me, I can't understand why I didn't take the first steps to do inner engineering any sooner, the introductory program. But after I applied to go, abroad for an employment opportunity, and that all failed, I think that was the lowest point I ever felt in my life. I suppose coming from parents who are Indian and have high expectations, and already kind of being a personal trainer is already a bit of a, what's our beta doing? Yeah, it's not exactly an academic profession to be a fitness, professional. But I sort of felt really low. And in that moment that it happened and I was rejected, I kind of just took it upon myself to say, this isn't the end. There's always a step ahead. And I was on the Isha Foundation website and saw the teacher training program. And I only just saw this little block in the side column advertising it, and I thought, this is it. So I jumped straight into that, and whoosh, off it took me. Yeah, quite a magical journey.
Wow, you kind of blasted through the first couple of questions I have, and you wove it together perfectly. So makes my life very, very easy and simple. So
Slow
just
me
to
down
be
if I
clear,
down.
sorry, you were saying?
Slow me down if I'm going,
Totally fine. Yeah. Podcast can be 15 minutes, 1 hour, half an hour, well, whatever happens, happens. And so, if I understood you correctly, in terms of yoga, you directly found yourself in contact with Isha and Sadhguru. You didn't go through any other route.
The only, I think it was a system of yoga called Shivananda style yoga, as the teacher had explained to me in those, once a week classes I used to have. By that time, the intention to teach never really came about. I think I was sort of in and out of jobs, and I was kind of trying to establish myself with a career that was related to my undergraduate degree. So there was sort of a lot of confusion there, and I never thought, oh, I could become a yoga teacher or an instructor at that point. But soon after I got into personal training, um, I was very much in the state of, oh, I want to develop and create a body, and very aesthetic, um, but also providing help for people in the best way that I knew. But as I was going through that journey as a fitness instructor or a personal trainer, I could definitely feel from my clients at the time that there's still something missing. They would come to do a class, and when you're training someone, there's obviously this banter, this back and forth conversations you have, and you get to know these people quite deeply in their own personal lives, what's going on. And so it's not only the fitness that I was offering. I felt like it's also some level of like kind of not that I'm qualified or anything, but counseling or giving advice or guidance or your perspective. And I thought, I'm really not. I mean, who am I to give any advice? You know, I can only give a perspective or a different perspective, or advice, a piece of advice. So I kind of felt like that people, even though they have, you know, reasonably good shaped bodies, they're physically fit, there's still something, you know, wrong in, or for them at least, something that doesn't fit right, and they're still kind of seeking to gain a physical body that gains appreciation from people, but still something inside is missing. So I thought, like, you know, as to add to this repertoire of, not repertoire, this skill set that I have, um, I wanted to kind of be able to offer more, but it didn't happen. Even that, as I was watching Sadhguru's satsangs and kind of understanding about yoga, that possibility of becoming a teacher never really kind of arose in my head. Yeah. So I think I went off track with your question there for a moment.
That's all right. The some of the best things, maybe all of the best things in life are non-linear. So it's fine.
Yeah, I agree with that, that sentiment.
Um, do you have a favorite yoga practice among the ones either that we teach or we practice or both, if it's the same?
Um, I would I would say that there's been different phases, of each practice that I've had, some experiences, which have been, you know, like when I first did Angamardana consistently every day during the teacher training program, it was quite a grueling process, because having a body that's quite rigid with muscles and, you know, tight, it felt like, oh, I'm, you know, just twisting steel in my body. And it was but then it sort of blossomed and it became very wonderful and flowy, and I just felt very free within myself. So there was a sort of a very intense period where it was very difficult and challenging, but then it just sort of unlocked, and um, it became a wonderful experience. Yogasanas have consistently been a wonderful process for me. Um, but I would have to say the one for me personally is Bhuta Shuddhi. Um, there's just something I can't. Uh, yeah, it's something it does. Like, it creates I think, a deep sort of stillness within me, um, that I feel facilitates the other practices, that makes the other practices uh, a powerful experience for me. Um, I mean, there are times where sometimes I have to squeeze practices in, and Buddha Shuddhis, not always, kind of something that I do, but I notice I feel a distinct difference between when I do it and when I don't do that. So I feel like that one for me personally has a strong impact.
Would you mind sharing any experience that really stood out for you in terms of testimonials from people who have learned any practice with you, be it online or in person, and that they came back with some feedback either during or after the program that really like blew your mind?
Um, hmm. I would say um, there was a group of participants that I taught, where um, I would say after the initial kind of practices that they learned, um, there was a sort of a struggle within themselves about being committed to the practices. Um, and so I just told them, you see what you can do, and you'll see that as you maintain the practices, do what you can, it will start to develop. And I sort of thought in my mind that at that time, I was in Beijing, and I thought, oh, we were doing correction classes, partner correction classes, and reviews. And I thought, oh, maybe it might take them a while before they come back for, a correction or a review. So I about after 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, they came back for a review and a correction together. And so we were speaking about it, and we were just kind of having a talk about how they were incorporating the practice within their daily schedule and their lives. And when I think one of them was speaking, and she became quite emotional, and I didn't kind of feel like I didn't expect the impact to be so deep with her like that. And then so that kind of, I think their emotions sort of bounced off each other, and so they became quite emotional about how powerful this practice had made an impact in their lives, a change. And so I kind of like had a feel at first, because we have people that speak about the practices, but when you see something so emotional, it kind of moved me in a way. Like I thought, oh wow, this has had quite a profound impact on them, for them to be so open and express how they feel about this impact in their day-to-day lives. So I think that was an experience from a participant, just too. And I think so, one way in terms of testimonials is that when the practices become embedded in people's lives, and they come back, and that you can see uh, just the level of involvement, and how deep their practices have got. I feel for myself that as a testimony, as a testimonial, is something that, even in class, when you see it happening, you have to kind of, you feel a little lump developing in your throat, and you might feel your eyes welling up, and you feel like, okay, you're here as a teacher, so you try not to let that get to you as well, because it is quite touching when you have something so powerful to offer people, and you see it, in the class taking place. So yeah, I think that for me has been a real eye opener, in seeing it in action, actually, more so than what participants, say, or any testimonials they give.
Have you ever taught children classes? I mean, we know, thanks to your introduction, also everybody watching this knows that you work with children on a daily basis. But in terms of yoga classes, have you ever taken any children class, and how was your experience?
Unfortunately, I haven't. I really, it's something that's actually something I want to look into, as a course, or as a possibility for the future for me. I remember when um, I was doing the training to teach children, and I got some feedback saying, like, you'd be really great, you'd be amazing at teaching children, and
I know, fact. It's a fact. I can totally see you.
So, yeah, I mean, I thought, this that was before I became, a kindergarten English teacher here in China. And I think it is something I would really love doing, but at the moment I'm already working with full time with children, and they're sort of not at the level of maturity that I can offer anything for that. They're still untouched by the kind of societal pressures and things that that will eventually kind of come. So right now, I think I work with children in a different capacity, and can offer something actually different to them. But yeah, it's definitely something that I really want to do. I'm looking at how to merge these possibilities of offering something in an academic setting, and seeing how that could work out.
Well, and luckily for these children, they're already uh, getting like a secondary benefit of yoga. If we
Definitely.
think of secondary effects, people always think in a negative way, like secondhand smoke. But in this case, it's a positive effect of the one
It
of the
is
main people
definitely.
interacting with them, who is investing so much in himself. So till the
Yes.
time comes that they're big enough to learn some, let's say, formal yoga practices, they're in good hands. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, yeah, definitely it is. I think there's a different, even for myself, actually. I think I've heard Sadhguru saying, like your family are a test of your sadhana. Um, and I think I also have that. My students also have a lot, they teach me a lot about where I am as well. Because it's beautiful. It is one of the most beautiful experiences that I've had, to be able to just be a teacher to children. Never mind the content of what I'm teaching. If I can't teach any practices or hatha yoga, there's still other ways to offer, who you are and what you've gained in your own life.
What would you say are some of the main obstacles that people face when they're approaching yoga? And when I teach in Italy versus here in India, I see different sets of preconceived notions. So, would you be able to talk in general about it and also specifically about China? Is there a kind of difference in mindset that you notice compared to, I don't know, maybe if you've taught in the UK or in India or elsewhere? Or otherwise, you can just focus on your experience with mostly Chinese participants.
I feel in on an initial kind of basis, a lot of people would throw some objections regarding life situations. I think that's something I experienced both in my PT, personal training, trying to sell programs and kind of help people in that way. And as well as hatha yoga programs, when people say, I work really late and I'm exhausted when I finish work, or I have to, I have family, so the time commitments. Um, Sometimes people throw, financial constraints there as well. So I say there's a lot on offer to, you can build up with some free practices. And now Isha and Sadhguru have so many practices to offer through the app itself. So there's always possibilities to build up from there. And I think, yeah, I would say a lot of people have a lot of objections in terms of, or restraints regarding their lifestyles. Quite a busy lifestyle with family and work commitments. Those generally seem to be the main objections or restrictions when it comes to, taking something new on in someone's life. Um, Now in England, I felt like the culture, the work culture, and the family culture and things are different, vastly different than in China. But I think especially I'm in Shenzhen in the south of China, which is like a young city. And so the general population is quite young here compared to when I was in Beijing, which has an aging, a much older kind of population. And so Shenzhen is known for kind of bringing a lot of young people in to work long hours, and rack up their money, and then kind of send it back home, or leave Shenzhen. So it has this sort of kind of culture that churns young people in and out to develop the economy and various facets of industry here. So it's quite interesting that people who have such a fast life really see yoga as something like a luxury thing to do, um, because it doesn't contribute from their perspective. It doesn't contribute to their life as deeply. I think this, to take it a step back, they have an idea that yoga is just kind of an exercise, or um, something to help them relax. But again, it's this in such a maybe in such a windmill or a rush that they don't kind of see it as a possibility to stop and something that they can venture into. And I think, yeah, this does, kind of show that a lot of people have preconceived notions of what yoga is about being, something that you just stretch the body and you just breathe and do breathing practices, which it is like that. But I think that, when they really delve into the science of yoga, there is a lot, there is a lot of things to understand about the depth of what yoga is and the possibilities that it holds. But on the surface level, people have, made assumptions. I think now there's a lot of, we're in the age of, information and technology being spread so easily. So, there's clothing lines that are built on, yoga, and it's becoming marketed in a certain way. And yoga is a diverse thing. So, there are, I think, some elements of yoga have been cherry picked and sort of kind of uh, um, broadcasted, so people have a mainstream idea of what yoga is. um, and I think that also contributes to it being misrepresented. So I think, yeah, I really do hope that people begin to explore it in a bit more, with a bit more, um, with a bit more depth, and understanding, or develop an understanding, so they can understand what really is on offer, and how transformational it could be for their lives.
Maybe one way in which I could hopefully support you, since I'm starting this drive to gather both in person and online testimonials about both inner engineering and hatha yoga practices. If you have committed people in China that are willing to, put their face and name to the testimonial, maybe I can support you. And also, with your help, we can dub it in English in case the person is not very fluent, or we can use subtitles, whichever way. And reverse, if you yourself or with the support of your partner, you want to dub some of the videos that I have on this channel into Mandarin or other Chinese languages, to use it as a promotional tool, feel free. So
Oh, yeah. Yes,
I'm
for
just
sure.
plugging my own YouTube channel also here. So I'll put a link somewhere up here. If people want to watch testimonials also, they can. So I'm just saying it to you off the top of my head, unscripted, that I would love to support you in that, because if we have if we have a huge video library that people can access without having, it's like dealing with your own mindset and objections in your own time and without asking anyone. So it's a very low threshold way for people to get rid of their objections and fears. So in that, I need the more teachers support me in this, and the more videos we can pump out to the world, the faster people will get rid of their notions, most of them unfounded. And just like you yourself said, I wish I had done in engineering much earlier, right? So I guess for most people who finally do our practices, hindsight is always 2020. You wanted to do it 1 year, 10 year, 100 years earlier. But yeah, so we can only speed the process up for other people.
Yes, yes. Well, I greatly appreciate that offer, because it is something that I want to move towards. I think I'm towards the end of my journey teaching at a kindergarten now, and feel like it's been a wonderful journey, and it's sort of helped me in many ways to get over, at one point, my fear of being around little human beings and children. I was very afraid of, and very within myself and restricted. And it's become a wonderful journey. And I feel like now I really want to do, and I want to offer more to those who are receptive. And I think my aim is to try and put it in an academic setting, because I think coming back to the culture of what China is, and even parents who want well-being for their children, I really do feel that this has powerful possibilities for a nation of young adults who are going into uh, a very turbulent sort of work life and life generally speaking. So I think, yeah, definitely, I think there's something that we can do to try and get some translation and some subtitles to help people understand what this is, and get a deeper understanding of it.
It could be one of the best ways for our respective adoptive countries to bond, since on the international stage, there's been a lot of sparks flying back and forth in the last few years and over the decades. So who knows? This could be one of the bridges that we can help build in a way, where we help two countries with a relatively young population and large population to deal with the pressures of modern life, and yet these are also two countries where it's the notion of a slow-paced, very deeply rooted and family-centered and altruistic look about life is very, very rooted, and it's not far away. Um, Whereas maybe in other countries, especially in the West, you may have to look back 1, 2, 3 generations. But here it's still
Right.
fresh in Asia, I guess. So it could easily, uh, these practices could easily help to keep people grounded and still go through this, whatever you can call as a modernity or progress, if you just throw it under one common denominator, and come out still with your head attached to your head, because as Sadhguru says, that's going to be the biggest challenge in the next 10 to 20 years for people to
Yes.
keep it together between the ears. So let's see. And I wanted to ask you, what are some of the most, I'm completely changing topic here, what are some of the most beautiful places where you've practiced yoga, whether it's
Uh,
in a different country or on a beach or in a mountain or on top of a fridge or on a balcony in a next to a tiger in a jungle? I don't know. You tell me.
Definitely not. I'm not a fan of cold places, so definitely not anywhere near the fridge. Um, um, I took, I think it was a few months out to travel around China pre-COVID, before everything was, very restricted. And I went to a province called Anhui, Anhui province. And there's a mountain called Huangshan, which is, I think the translation of the characters would be Yellow Mountain. And so I kind of, I didn't plan it actually. I just took a train and stayed at a hostel overnight, and said to the people at the reception, "What's there to do around here?" And they said, "Oh, there's a mountain just there, and it's like, I think, one of seven or maybe nine really popular mountains." And so I think there's a saying in Chinese that if you've climbed this mountain or you've gone up this mountain, then it's the same as going to all the seven mountains in China. So I was like, oh, not bad for my first mountain in China. And so they said to me, you need to take a tent because you can go up there and stay the night there. So I was just like, okay, well, where do I get one? And they provided me with all the camping gear, and said, you want to take some food up there because there's you won't find anywhere to get food up there, so pack your own food, and here's your tent and your sleeping bag. And it took me almost, I started right at the very base, so I could have taken the cable cars and taken the nice easy way, but I wanted to do the whole journey. So I walked right from the very base of it, and there were coaches driving past me to take people to the cable car spot. And so I walked and took these very steep the incline was really, really steep. Um, and so, yeah, I walked and climbed up these stairs for 7 hours and got just to the top just to watch the sun go down. And I was smashed. I was absolutely exhausted. Um, and I think that process alone, I felt like, yo, that was my Kailash in China. Um,
While
and
you're telling this, I actually, instead of Kailash, I had another image in my mind. I was thinking of Smeagol and the two hobbits climbing the steps into Mordor. Come,
yeah,
hobbit
I
sis.
mean, yeah, it was challenging. And so by the time I got there, the sun was just setting, and I managed to take a few beautiful photos. And then I was kind of setting up my tent, and there was a lot of people in this area. And so I was like, now, I want to do some of my sadhana. Maybe I can, find a remote spot. And so it wasn't very dark, but it was starting to get dark. So I set my tent up and left my things there. I felt it was quite safe to leave my things there. So, and then kind of ventured out into like some quiet area to do my practices. And I don't know, I think doing your practices is special, but then when you're at like a high altitude, or at a very high place, I think it's a very different experience. The wind feels different, the air feels different, and then when you come out of your practices, there's just an absolutely magical feeling of when I opened my eyes, I was already very high, almost like above the clouds. And it just felt magical or celestial, like I was in a celestial realm, because I could see uncountable number of stars. um it was just a feeling of, yeah, that was, for me, one of the most special places that I've practiced, aside from obviously the practices at the Adiyogi Alayam. That's always a treat for me. um and at the ashram, in Coimbatore. But outside of Isha and the ashram, it has to be on the top of Huangshan Mountain for me. That's been very magical experience for me. Yeah, just being able to do it in such a different place where the air felt different, the scene felt very different, and just very, yeah, very connected to nature. I think that has been. I mean, there's strange places. I think I listened to your previous podcast, and obviously there's always that when you want to do your practices at the airport, and you're in the back of your mind, you're thinking, what happens if security kind of just gives you the stare down, and starts to call more security and say, what's this guy doing? Or people start gathering or listening. And there's always places, like busy places like the airport, that kind of make me a bit weary of doing the practices. But obviously that also checks your level of commitment as well, as you said as you spoke about in the previous podcast. So, but for me specifically, I think doing it above sea level, anywhere higher, way high up in the mountains, is very special.
Approximately what altitude was that? Do you remember?
Um,
Because it's only beyond the 1,500 meters of elevation, right? Above 4,500 feet that you start having trouble with certain yoga practices in terms of the breathing.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was that. I wouldn't say it was as high as I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I'll have to check up on how high I was. But I remember the ascent was going up by the 100 meters, and then climbing up every so often. There's a marker that says you're now 200 meters, 300 meters, or whatnot, and then it starts to jump, and then you don't know whether it's the air or the fatigue that's making you feel like, oh God, I need to sit down and take a breath. Or Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how high that was, but yeah, I was definitely in eye shot of, you know, seeing clouds below me. So it was yeah, quite high
We'll
up.
find out and put the exact number right below this video or in the video itself.
That would be
So,
great.
you already mentioned that at the point where you think to transition from being a kindergarten teacher to other activities, including teaching a little more. So, would you be able to share some of your goals with teaching? Like, do you have, or are you planning to set some kind of goals? Or are you more thinking, like, I'll just see how it flows and I'll decide accordingly? I'm not going to plan ahead too much.
Um, to start off, before I go into that, I don't know, I mean, when I kind of critically look at my own thoughts or ideas, I sort of on one part kind of think, oh, that's quite crazy. You want to do something like that. Um, and another part is kind of like, you know, it's a challenge. It'll be interesting to see how or where this will take you. Because in my mind, teaching has always, I've sort of felt within myself that I'm always going to be teaching at one point or another. And now that I've kind of, in recent, I'd say in recent years, I've sort of felt that like now it's time to end the journey teaching in kindergarten and kind of focus, you know, like going into teaching full time. And so ideally, because I've been teaching as a kindergarten teacher, I've learned a lot about the way education is in China and how heavily it's prioritized um, for you know everyone who has every child who has expectations to either climb out of their social status or their financial status and to be a provider. And so it's you know dawned upon me even more and more heavily in recent years the impact and how important education is, but how hatha yoga can be, and I believe it probably is being used by many teachers around the world to help young adults and growing children to make their lives a more beautiful and joyful experience. So I want to combine this and the way the sort of various pathways um, I've sort of looked at is I'm currently studying a master's, or well, about to start it up after a period of academic leave. And so I believe or I feel that once I complete that master's in education, I will have some footing in education, you know, to have knowledge of the educational climate, not only in China but globally through this kind of through this credential, um, and also on the other hand, the ability to teach classical hatha yoga as Isha has provided me with that opportunity. So I feel like trying to find a place in an academic setting, possibly as part of a curriculum, uh, is something I would like to do. Um, and I think it sort of has to start sort of at a pilot level where you sort of see how small elements of hatha yoga can be implemented in a daily practice for students or for any school that is willing to have it incorporated into their curriculum. But so far from my own experience as a kindergarten teacher, it's the timetables are very tight. I find myself ferrying children around from place to place around the school with very little sort of even free playtime, which is something so important for children. And from my own experience, I feel like I just, you know, I do find myself saying, okay, we'll finish English class earlier so you can, scoot off and go and play, just free play, just enjoy your time being a kid. It's crazy when you get older. So just play now. So I do have that sort of understanding in my head that even if it's this tight, their timetables and schedules are this tight when they're 4 to 6 years old, what kind of schedule they have when they go, and the parents will pick them up from school and take them, and what will parents think about yoga. So I do feel that, there is huge possibility for it to grow. Because again, well-being is also embedded in Chinese culture. So, it's so deeply embedded, but at the same time, with westernization, there's a clash, and there's a lot going on for the youth, and young working population of China, where they need to work. I mean, everyone has to work, I suppose, in some capacity, but to make it a joyful process is where there's a definite clash. And so I think I would like to introduce it into part of a curriculum to answer your question. But there's also other possibilities, because I love fitness. I love a whole bunch of different sporting activities and sports. So another idea, which is what I still, that's my sort of crazy sort of idea, was like, oh, maybe you could do a program, a course to become a mountaineering instructor, and you could kind of, help to train a batch of people who are, who want to go around the world and do yoga in some of the, I guess, safe altitudes, not like, the, the type of altitudes where you can die, but just, some altitudes where, hatha yoga can kind of help create a system that can facilitate your journey up a mountain. And for those adventurers that like to go to, high places, uh, both physically and spiritually, it would be great. So yeah, I mean, that's a sort of an idea, but again, having to get credentials and go through that training, it takes time and perseverance, and knowing, that sort of terrain. So I think I've got sort of fanciful ideas and options. I just sort of need to ground myself and see, what's possible, and what's not. Because even in the sporting world, hatha yoga has, immense possibilities, not only for like athletic fitness, but for developing the sort of mentality and the mental focus and clarity that athletes strive for, when they're at the competitive level. So yeah,
Actually,
there's
yesterday, March 1st, 2025, I saw a video that somebody forwarded in a group of teachers of an Indian professional mixed martial artist who, after a fight in an octagon interview, he was saying that inner engineering, which is one of our least physical practices, inner engineering helped him so much in many phases of his life, and including as a fighter. So mentality, all that. So yeah,
yes. I think if someone has a superficial understanding of yoga, that's already good. But once they begin to deepen their understanding of the possibilities, then I feel like a lot of things that people thought weren't possible can start to open up for them. And yeah, from non-physical practices, a lot can be used for people, like the as simple as the tools for transformation, very powerful and simple practices. um and I mean, they can be applied in all facets of life. So I think it's a wonderful possibility for people to have that.
you already alluded that so many projects, and before coming towards a conclusion of our podcast, I wanted to invite you to share with the audience some of your hobbies, some of the many hobbies and interests you've taken up over the years, many of them which we share also. So I'm kind of excited,
Well,
even myself, to hear, because I'm sure there are a few which I don't know about also.
um, I really do like playing sports and keeping physically fit. It's something that I've always been doing from a young age. Even sports like netball. When I was quite young, I played netball and I signed up for it, and I just realized that netball was predominantly played by girls, and so I was the only boy on a team of girls, and I was like, oh, it doesn't matter, I'm still having fun and I still enjoy the sport and the game. And so I've always been involved in sports and kind of just dabbled in things. And so most recently, I've loved martial arts for a long time. And so most recently I've been doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, boxing, um, and that's been very interesting, learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a non-striking martial art. A lot of grappling, a lot of close proximity with people. So that's been very interesting. I like rock climbing or bouldering. Um, that's a very nice and yeah, quite. I mean, it offers the possibility of being quite meditational as well when you do something like bouldering. Um, this sport. I don't think it's a sport so much as a game that people play in China. Mostly the old folks who have the free time. It's like a feather shuttlecock. I don't know. Have you? I think I gave you one, right? One of those. Yeah, we call them a jianzi, and it's like a disc that has like a heavy disc that has feathers kind of coming out of it. So if you kick it, it kind of floats down. So it gives you enough time to kind of coordinate yourself and kick it up again. So groups of people can stand in a circle and kick this feather shuttlecock around. And there's very fancy ways of doing it. You can let it go over your head and flick your heel behind you, and it's very poetic in a sense, poetry in motion when you see people playing with it. So I've played with that with a lot of older folks who move a lot better than younger folks. A lot, they move very graceful. And so I've played some of that. Yeah, other sports that I've done
Primal movements
since I was
also is a big one, I think, for you.
say it again.
Primal movements.
Movements, yeah. I mean, exploring movements and animal movements. It's fair to say that we as humans are quite animalistic, in many different ways. And so I think this exploration of movement has really been an interesting a journey. Learning how to crawl again. I never realized how strenuous crawling is actually, and moving from this kind of squatting position into crawling and hanging, all these basic movements that are really quite fun when people, get involved in it and loosen themselves up to the idea of crawling around your living room or crawling out of your bed in the morning and doing these different movements and standing on one leg and brushing your teeth and wobbling like you're holding a vrikshasana or something. I think those primal movements are a very good, fun way to play. It's all play. Yeah. Um, and I really enjoy that. I think even with kids as a kindergarten teacher, you see the way that they move. They, and I've been obviously now my students are getting older. I have to sort of give them instruction to say, can you walk without flailing your arms around? But that sort of movement is very liberating. I can see, when they're walking and they have a bounce and they kind of talk to each other and they move their body in these very wonderful and strange ways. I sort of feel like why don't we do that? We obviously we'd be put in an asylum, very quickly if we started to walk down the street, in these sort of weird ways. But it is very free. It's a very natural and inherent way of expressing how your body feels. Um, and so body movements, yeah, learning these animal movements and how to transition is a very, very cool sort of exercise or activity. Yeah, I enjoy that too.
In fact, I'd like to take this opportunity to give you a huge thank you because you're the first person that sparked the curiosity in different types of movements outside of our classical hatha yoga practice also. Because I also did a lot of sports as a youngster in my teens and 20s also. But then there was a huge gap till I found yoga. But even with yoga, I felt I want to explore also other movements. And that day in one teacher upgrade, when I saw you in one of the dorms, I think you were doing a lizard crawl. I was like, wow, what is that? It's amazing. It just
Yeah.
it just blew my mind. I had never seen it on YouTube. No, nothing, nowhere else. I had no clue. I think you were showing it to someone or you were just practicing on your own. I just remember like, and then during COVID, when too much time was on hand, that's when I actually first, I think I've told you, but that's when I first took up animal movements or primal movements in a big way, using YouTube as my professor and asking you, shooting some videos of myself and sending them to you for some feedback.
Yeah,
And
I
then I
remember.
explored so many things and I keep on learning actually with different online academies. And even now that I'm looking into learning Hanumangada or Mugdars or maces for using as these swinging motions, all that started thanks to you. So I really, really want to thank you for that because it opened a world for me, and it's so much freedom seeing the range of movement your body is capable of, and which I mean, as a yoga teacher, you're kind of I don't know, you kind of assume you know many movements and you're pretty flexible and all that, but it's endless exploration and it's so beautiful, and that raw emotion, that raw energy from the primal movements is unbelievable.
I
And
think that goes back to something that Sadhguru has said about, even the way that you sit and why the asana, and how many bodies the how many positions the body can sit this way or that way, how many positions, innumerable. But obviously this is why for me hatha yoga is so unbelievably special, because it brings alignment in our system, and that's phenomenal. Of all of these innumerable postures and movements the body can do, there are set ones that can transform your life and your being. And then aside from hatha yoga practices, then in your daily life, everything else becomes a play with movement. You see things and obstacles and parkour, even that's something that I did previously. So then you look at trees and higher places, like you shouldn't climb, and go, wow, it would be cool if I could climb up there, then I can jump down and roll. And that's just a play with your environment. I think that's some having the ability to move and express yourself in that way is a wonderful thing, because then you don't restrict yourself to rigid patterns and become solidified. You become a very gracious and flowing sort of human being, and it makes everything much nicer. So yeah, it's absolutely my pleasure to have introduced it to you, because I think in all aspects we're all kind of students and learners. So it's great to see that it had a positive and wonderful impact, and to bring that kind of feeling of fluidity in your day-to-day life, and brings play. It's important for that. So yeah, I'm grateful to have been able to, or to be the person that offered it to you. But I'm sure you would have learned it somewhere else as well. You know, there's so many people. You could have learned it from a monkey. Yeah.
But I needed a spark. I needed a spark because even long back when I lived in Russia as an exchange student, I did kickboxing for a few months. I enjoyed it a lot, except that they twisted my nose and it never became straight again. But I remember the posture. My posture was fantastic, and I felt so confident walking on the street. I was the total rookie. I was not really good, but just doing the practices, that going through the grind of the training, and the teacher saying your legs should fly like birds, and all these expressions, which when you hear them in a different language is double the satisfaction. But
Right, right.
yeah, and then picking up calorie a few months back, all that also again thanks to that spark that came from you. So I'm happy that some element of martial arts is back into my life. So now we've come to the rapid fire round. I don't have
Oh,
many questions, and some I'll make up on the spot, but let's see how it goes. So
okay, sure.
if you had to summarize China in one word or in one sentence, how would you summarize it? Can be the country or your experience of the country.
Um, well, I don't know. I mean, not to be offensive, but weird and wonderful. That's how yeah, weird and wonderful. Now I'm used to it. It's not so weird, but it's still wonderful. Yeah.
Great. Shenzhen or Beijing?
Oh, Shenzhen.
Noodles or rice?
Oh, as of recently, neither. If I had my preference, rice,
Fruits or vegetables?
fruits,
Now let's see about Italian food. Pasta or pizza?
pizza, hands down pizza.
All
I
right.
love pizza. I have
Like thin
a,
crust or more Napoli style with the nice thick fluffy crust?
both. I don't pizza full stop. I love it all.
All right. Favorite color?
Oh, that's difficult. Oh, favorite color. I would say red. I do like I like red.
Red.
Yeah, I have an affinity to red. Or
What are the first couple of words that you learned in Mandarin? Do you still
or
remember?
bad words.
Bad words.
Sitting
Okay, we'll skip
sitting in a
those.
taxi.
What is
Sitting in a taxi.
the first non-adulterated word that you learned in Chinese?
Uh,
Or some
uh,
sentence maybe like for example, maybe in the meantime you can let your memory kick back in. I remember one of the first sentences I learned when I was in Russia was when I was in the metro, and I learned the sentence of, when the announcement comes, be careful, the doors are closing. So that's one of the first
yeah.
sentences. It's like etched in my memory. Осторожно, двери закрываются. So it was like this booming voice, and I was like, wow. I mean, I'd already learned Russian before going to Russia, but still being there and being in the metro and hearing this announcement that I understood, I was like, wow, this is awesome.
Okay, so I think there's two that come to mind. Um, One is I want that
Very
because
useful.
我要这个 like I want that. So my friend said, like you don't know what objects are or what they're called, so you just have to point and say 这个 means that one. So and then the second one he taught me was no, because he took me to quite a popular marketplace where when you walk down, people are just bombarding you, trying to pull you into their shops and sell you things. So he was like, when you go there, you just say, boo, booyah, 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 or boo, 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 boo. Like just constantly saying that. So he was walking in front of me and I'm just behind him, like kind of like, oh my God, this is crazy. And he's spearheading the way through these retail sellers. So yeah, those two, 我要这个 and 不要.
What aspect of Sadhguru's mission do you mostly connect with? Is it the yoga practices? Is it Rally for Rivers? Is it the new project of Miracle of Mind and the related meditation? Is it the social outreach? Or what of the many aspects, if any, is something that not necessarily your favorite, but something you really connect with? You feel, wow, that is really unique, or that draws me more than the others.
There was something that sort of really touched I don't know, like my emotions and something with me, which was the I think it was calling and Save Soil. Um, because obviously I work with children, and I kind of think, oh, what would the future be like for them? And Save Soils initiatives about like food and harvest, like the harvestation of harvesting of food, and well, yeah, food, vegetables, grains, etc., that make our life. So that for me, when Sadhguru said those statistics, that in the year 2050 the world soil will be depleted, the quality of the soil will be depleted, it just kind of sent this like sort of heavy feeling in my chest. And yeah, it kind of makes me wonder, like, what kind of world will the future generations have when food is, hopefully it doesn't get to that point. And I think something that Sadhguru said about when he was doing the uh was it the motorcycle ride for Kaveri? I think that was Rally for Rivers, actually. But he had mentioned that that farmers and the suicide rate of farmers had gone up, and it just kind of made me feel that the people who are growing food for the nation are this something terrible, immensely terrible, is happening to them as a consequence of something they're giving their life towards, and that sort of touched me a lot, because even in China, it's largely agricultural in some parts of China, and so you know I have like access to like such amazing fruits here. I love the fruits here. um and so I thought when Sadhguru was doing these programs, I thought, oh, that was in India. But then when you think about your own locality, like, what about the people here? And they don't have this this understanding of what's going on, these initiatives in India, and what we can do here as well. So I think there were teachers and volunteers here working really hard to promote this. And so I think those programs were really quite inspiring for me, um, to get involved in. And I couldn't get involved in the capacity that a lot of other people were. But even with my students, I kind of really place importance when the opportunity arises. Now it's coming to summertime. Well, we're in spring at the moment. I'm like, right, kids, let's get our hands dirty. Let's get involved in this, and start growing things and teaching them about the life cycle of plants and things. So I think those things are deeply meaningful to me. And even now, as I say, I feel like I should do more to get involved in that, and kind of spreading that mission.
This actually reminds me uh, of a conversation we used to have maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I was saying, maybe though we don't have immediate access to the same social media platforms in our two adoptive countries, but being that India and China now, as of today of this recording, have approximately or almost 3 billion people among the two of them, still having some kind of presence online where you and I showcase the beauty of both the countries, could be something so valuable, not just to develop that friendship of the two countries, but even to bring attention to current topics like the quality of soil, uh, the fact that it's presented together. And for these two countries, I think it's still something magical, but we'll explore it later. But in the spur of the moment, I just felt like bringing that point back. It's been a while we didn't talk about it, and we'll have. so many logistical challenges because different social media platforms are available in both countries. But
Yeah.
somehow, I think in, out of hundreds of projects I have for the next few years, if I have to make a top three, that is in the top three, just out of sheer importance. Also because this is the century of the Asian countries, at least for the foreseeable future. So yeah, I think both of us, I'm pretty sure I can speak for both of us. We'd be thrilled to somehow be we are already part of the process. But if we can inject a little bit of consciousness and spirituality into it, uh, maybe it'll help. Let's see.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. It is the one drop that is the ocean by itself, eh?
Yeah,
Um, yeah, definitely. So I think it's definitely there for, to be promoted, especially because, everyone holds human life of high value. So, it's just a shame that sometimes we have to go through upheaval to make changes rather than taking a preventative approach, and so I think that this is one of those times where we really need to take a preventative approach for the sake of, the next generations and the generations after that, um, for them to have something and not delve so deep into fanciful ideas of leaving the planet on a spaceship, etc. Um, yeah. So I think
it's fine to leave the planet, I guess, but not for the willing for wanting to abandon it because we made a mess of it.
I
So,
agree. Yeah.
anything you'd like to say in conclusion? Some whatever thoughts come up, or something that you would like to share with the world about you, uh, or about your
Uh,
journey as a human being. Uh,
well, I'm just I feel like I'm just a simple human being just going on my journey. I don't think I have anything so profound. I think I've learned a lot, and I think a lot of people, kind of have ideas of like, teachers and like we're still learning. I think that's fair to say for everyone, even at the highest levels. We're still kind of have something to learn and something to share. So I just feel like I'm just a small aspect to going on my journey and learning things and going, oh, I didn't know that before. Now I know, and then off to the next thing. So yeah, I really hope that people can continue like uh, grow and enjoy their lives more. I think the world would be a really nice and better place where people are just happier. So yeah, I hope everyone who's listening can extract something from this conversation between us both, and be happier and joyful. And of course, thank you to you for having me on your podcast. Uh, Greatly appreciate it to be able to share whatever I have. Um, and yeah, maybe you'll have me on in the future sometime.
Absolutely. I'm I'm still for now sticking to relatively short podcasts, but at some point, when I feel confident enough, I'm gonna cut away any time limits and open up in a bigger way. Until that time comes, I'll keep trying to hone my skills. And though you refer to yourself as a simple or normal human being and a small part of this creation, I, in my eyes, you're much more than that. And it's really a privilege to have you as a friend and as a brother. You've inspired me in so many ways, and I'm really, really grateful. And you're also one of the few people from outside India who has visited me not once, but twice. So my family and I really think the world of you, and I really, really appreciate having you in my life, man. I really mean it.
I appreciate
And
that. And yeah, again, it's wonderful. Thank you. Because it's wonderful being over. It's wonderful coming back. It's a real homecoming. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the next time I can pop over and we can chill together and practice
yes,
and do some more crawling,
yes,
etc.
Exactly. And we'll see. I'll speak to you right after this podcast also. If people want to contact you for classes, what kind of contact details to give, or social media handles, be they Chinese or international, whichever way you
Uh,
want to be contacted, we can put it in a. I'll put it on in this video and also in the description of the video, in case people want to approach you for online classes or in-person classes, in case they live in China or they're planning to travel to China, specifically to
yeah,
Shenzhen. And
yeah, I'd appreciate that. That would be great.
let's do
Yes.
that. Take care, brother.
Thank you for having me. Namaskaram. Uh,
Namaskaram.
See you soon.